Welcome. Tonight, you're going to step into a world very few remember. A life shaped not by clocks or cities, but by the slow, grinding rhythm of hooves in sand. A place where the sun scorches by day, the cold bites by night, and the horizon stretches so far, you begin to forget what it feels like to be surrounded by walls. This is the Gobi Desert, vast, silent, and indifferent. And in the heart of it, you are a camel tender. There are no roads, no inns, no guarantees of safety. Just you, a caravan of animals, and a sky so wide it swallows time. Every morning, you wake to frost. Every evening, you fall asleep with the scent of sweat, dung, and dust still clinging to your clothes. You speak to no one for days. You navigate by the sun, the stars, and the tracks of hoofprints fading in the wind. But there is beauty here too, hidden in the stillness, the loyalty of your camels, and the moments when silence becomes something more than emptiness. So lie back, let your mind drift, and follow the slow footsteps of a life long forgotten. This is what it was like to be a camel tender in the Gobi Desert. The wind never truly rests in the Gobi. It slides across the dunes like a whisper you can't quite interpret. Not angry, not gentle, just persistent. And it carries with it fine grains of sand that find their way into everything. The folds of your blanket, the cracks between your fingers, even the spaces behind your teeth. You wake with that sand. It's already inside you before your eyes open. There's no alarm, no rooster. Just cold, dry, sharp, and immediate. It hits your face before you move a muscle. You blink slowly, not because you're tired, but because rushing doesn't fit this place. The desert has its own pace, and if you want to survive here, you learn to follow it. The light hasn't arrived yet. A deep grayness hovers over everything. Your breath forms a pale cloud when you exhale. You sit up, careful not to disturb the thin layer of dust that settled during the night. It blankets your blanket, coats your clothes, covers your boots. There's a stillness that feels like it's waiting for something, though you've stopped asking what. The camels groan nearby, 7 in total, each with its own personality, its own temperament. Some are still lying down, others already standing, their long legs awkward and deliberate. You listen to their sounds, low, throaty, familiar. It's the sound you hear every day, not music exactly, but repetition that becomes comfort. You live in a tent made of thick canvas, stitched together with patience and necessity. It's small, barely enough space to stretch out fully, but it holds the night off, most of the time. You bend forward and reach for your boots. One is half filled with sand. Of course it is. You shake it out gently, not carelessly. Sand doesn't respond well to defiance. It gets everywhere. Always. Outside, the desert yawns under the weight of silence. You step out, pulling your shawl tighter around your shoulders. It's cold enough to make your joints stiff, but this doesn't surprise you anymore. You haven't been surprised in years. Not by the cold, not by the sand, not by the loneliness that trips in slowly, like melted wax. Your hands find the tin kettle near the old fire pit. Last night's embers have long faded. You pour some water into the kettle. Not much, just enough for tea. The firewood is buried under a tarp, brittle and dry, harvested from a place you barely remember. You light the fire slowly. The sun still hasn't come. Camels shuffle in the background. You hear Book snort, the one who refuses to cooperate unless he's first in line. You laugh softly, not with humor, but with recognition. Everyone has their patterns. You boil the tea. It's bitter and smoky. Nothing added, no sugar, no milk. But in this early hour, it tastes like peace. You sip it slowly, hands cupped around the metal mug to keep them warm. It burns your tongue, just a little, just enough to remind you that you're awake. You start checking the camels, one by one. Myanmar has a sore foot, still healing. You clean it gently. Sand gets trapped in the folds of their skin, just like yours. You inspect saddles, adjust ropes, count water skins. Everything has its place. Everything must be right. This isn't just routine. It's survival dressed as habit. The horizon begins to brighten. A line of soft amber creeps upward, painting the dunes in pale gold. Shadows stretch like memories. You stand in the light, holding your shawl close. You watch the camels turn their heads, instinctively facing the sun. It's an ancient reaction. Even before humans learned to kneel, animals understood reverence. This hour belongs to no one. It exists outside time. It's not morning yet, not night anymore. Just a soft passage between extremes. The desert allows it briefly, and you learn to take it gently, like holding a glass sculpture in your hands. There's sand between your fingers now. You don't shake it off. You press your fingers together. It's part of the place, part of you. You stretch slowly. Your joints crack. Your back aches. Your knees complain. But you don't respond. Complaints echo here, and the wind never answers. You prepare food for the camels. Dried grass, stored in bundles wrapped with cloth. Each bundle carefully rationed. Not just for the journey, for the responsibility. These animals trust you, not because they know your name, but because they know your rhythm. You load the packs, one by one, heavy, practical. Grain, gear, rope, a rusted lantern. You stack and balance everything with the precision of someone who has learned that one misstep can lead to days of delay. The camels don't resist. They shift under the weight, then settle. They understand. There's no room for rebellion in the sand. You eat a strip of dried meat. Chew slowly, drink more tea. You don't talk. There's no one to talk to, and that's okay. Words here carry too much weight. Silence is lighter. You think about the day ahead, not in detail, just in feeling. The wind will rise, the sun will burn, the sand will shift. These are facts, not predictions. You accept them the way you accept breath. As the sky turns from amber to pale blue, you tie the last strap and adjust your hood. You glance around once more. The camp is ready. The camels are ready. You are ready. And still, you wait. Not for anything in particular. Just a few more seconds of stillness. You watch the way the light spills across the sand, touching everything, turning ordinary shapes into monuments. You breathe deeply. There's sand in your teeth again. A few grains. Barely noticeable, but you feel them. You always do. It's the taste of the desert, the texture of this life. Grit and silence and golden light. You whisper something to Satsa. She doesn't respond, but her ears flick, briefly. A sign. Enough. You begin to walk. The camels follow. Not behind, not beside. Just near, as they always do. And the day begins. Not with noise, not with fanfare, but with footsteps. And sand. The desert doesn't give you many things. No crowds. No conversations. No celebrations. But it gives you camels. And after a while, that becomes enough. They're more than animals out here. They're more than work companions. They are your family now. You learn that slowly. Not in dramatic flashes, but in moments too quiet for most people to notice. It starts with the way you know them, not just by name, but by pattern. You could pick out Mayagmar's footsteps in a sandstorm. His gait has a slight drag, left leg trailing ever so slightly. Satsa lifts her feet like she's walking through a shallow stream. Book huffs with each step, even when he isn't tired. It's not just sound or sight. It's a feeling, a rhythm that lives in your chest. You whisper to them as you work, not because they'll answer, but because it helps. Words, in this place, don't need replies. They just need to be released. Easy, girl, you murmur as you untangle a strap from Satsa's belly. She sways. grunts, doesn't look at you, but you know she heard, in the way her breath slows, in the way she chooses not to step away. Their fur smells of old journeys, sun, dust, dried sweat, and wild grass long vanished from sight. Not unpleasant, not sweet, just true. You've grown to love that smell. It greets you every morning, and it lingers when the wind is still. Sometimes, when the desert is quiet enough, you hum old songs. Not to yourself, to them. Tunes your grandmother used to hum while baking barley cakes. Songs your father sang while stitching harnesses. The camels don't react. But if you stop mid-song, one might glance back. A subtle nudge. Keep going. You speak to them like people. And sometimes you wonder if they understand more than they let on. You don't have children. You don't have siblings nearby. You haven't hugged another person in months. But you touch these creatures every day. You run your fingers through their thick coats, press your palms to their noses when they get anxious. You know how to calm them, better than you know how to calm yourself. When Book is upset, he spins his head around, searching for something, anything to bite or spit at. You step in before he does. You place a hand near his cheek. Whisper again. It's all right, old man. We're not lost. Not yet. And somehow he stills. His breathing settles. His eyes blink slowly. You know when they're thirsty before they show it. You know when they're sore before they limp. You know when they're angry before they grunt. It's a language built not on words, but on glances, posture, pauses. Myanmar hates flies. You discovered this one summer when he refused to sit down near the water hole. You swatted them away. He sat. Now, every time flies buzz around, he waits for you to deal with them. You do. Because that's what family does. You remember one morning in early fall, the air was thin and sharp. The camels hadn't eaten much the night before. Grain was low. You fed them your last handful. Didn't save any for yourself. Book nudged you after. Not aggressively. Just a touch. A soft, wordless thank you. No one else would have noticed it. No one else was there. But for you, it was everything. They have moods, personalities, patterns. Satsa refuses to walk on cracked earth unless she sees someone else do it first. She's cautious. Myanmar lies down slowly, knees folded with ceremony, like a monk at prayer. Book chews ropes when he's bored. You've learned to keep extras on hand. There was a time, years ago, when you tried to teach them commands. You gave them names, hand signals, vocal prompts. It didn't work. Not really. What worked was repetition, trust, familiarity. You being there every day through wind and heat and stillness. Now, when you whistle a certain way, they come. Not because you trained them, but because they've accepted you. Satsa once saved your life. A sandstorm hit from nowhere. You were out scouting a ridge, trying to find a smoother path. Visibility dropped. Air turned gold. You panicked. Began shouting. But she came. Her silhouette appeared out of the blur. You grabbed onto her harness, let her guide you back. She didn't hesitate. You didn't speak. You didn't need to. There's loyalty here. Mutual. Earned. They've seen you cry. You didn't mean for it to happen, but the desert pulls memories out of you. One night, around a fire, you thought of someone you lost. Your father. Maybe it was the way the flames flickered. Maybe it was the way the stars looked too much like the ones from your childhood. You cried. Quietly. No drama. Book approached, sat near you, not touching, just present. For an hour, you didn't move. Neither did he. That night, you realized something. You are never truly alone with them nearby. They are your mirror. You see your mood reflected in their posture, your exhaustion mirrored in their pace, your pain echoed in their silence. You don't dress them up. You don't parade them. You don't ask them to perform. You just live beside them. You care for them, and they care for you. Family out here doesn't look like it does in cities. No dinners, no birthdays, no photographs. Family is who waits for you at sunrise, who grunts when your steps get too far ahead, who settles beside you when the fire dies, who shares silence without discomfort. There was a time, maybe the third year you were out here, when you thought you were losing your mind. Loneliness crept in like fog, thick and unwelcome. You started talking too much to yourself, started questioning your reality. But the camels never judged. They stood, they walked, they listened. That was enough. You began naming feelings after them. Myanmar is stubbornness. Satsa is wisdom. Ook is mischief. When you're happy, you say it feels like Satsa's sigh before sleep. When you're tired, you say it feels like Myanmar refusing to stand. When you're lost, you say it feels like Book when the scent trails go nowhere. It's silly, but it helps. You've tied prayer flags to their saddles before long journeys. Not because they needed protection, but because you needed ritual. You whispered blessings in old dialects you barely remember. They didn't respond, but they didn't move until you finished. They wait. They understand timing. They understand you. And that's all you've ever wanted. At night, when the stars arrive, you often sleep beside them, not inside the tent, but out under the open sky. Their warmth beats back the chill. Their breath is rhythmic, deep, calming. You wake with sand in your hair, fur in your nose, and comfort in your chest. In the Gobi, nothing is guaranteed. But with them, one thing remains. You are not alone, not really. And some days, that truth carries you farther than any map ever could. You start to understand the desert better once you realize that it doesn't conform to expectations. People hear Gobi and picture nothing but endless dunes, sand stretching past the horizon, smooth and golden like a picture in a travel magazine. But you know better. You know it shifts constantly. The desert is a shape changer, a quiet trickster. One morning you wake on a gravel plain, the ground hard beneath you, sharp stones poking through the soles of your boots. By nightfall, you're walking through a stretch of soft dunes that roll like waves, gentle and deceptive. They look peaceful but tire your legs like no mountain ever could. Every step sinks. Every breath earns its place. And the colors change too, not just with the light, but with your mood. Sometimes the sky is electric blue. Sometimes it's white as bone, washed out by haze. The land reflects your thoughts in strange ways. You begin to feel like the desert watches you, responds to you, reshapes itself depending on what you're willing to carry. Heat comes early. It doesn't ask permission. By noon, it roars not loudly, but forcefully, like someone breathing on you from too close. You squint into the glare. The sun is merciless, flattening every shadow, blurring every landmark. The horizon shimmers. That shimmer becomes shape. That shape becomes a lie. You see what looks like water, a wide silver river. Your heart lifts, but you know better. You've walked toward these illusions before, and you've learned the desert doesn't offer gifts, only reflection, only reminder. Even the sound changes out here. In the mornings, the wind is sharp and fast, dragging pebbles across the ground, rattling old canvas, whistling through the cracks in your cart. By midday, the wind hushes, not gone, just silent. You miss it when it leaves, because silence, real silence, settles heavy. You hear your own thoughts too clearly. At night, the frost arrives, quietly, as if to apologize for the heat. You feel it in your fingers first, then in your toes, then in your breath. You wrap yourself in thick layers, shawls, coats, cloths patched together over the years. But the cold always finds the soft places, always settles in the joints. You sleep curled, tight, like a seed waiting to sprout. Some nights, You don't sleep at all. Just listen and wait. The stars are different here. They don't twinkle. They burn, like tiny fires hung above the earth. You stare at them and forget how long you've been walking. You forget names. You forget promises. You remember only patterns, the same constellations your ancestors knew. Orion's belt, the hunter, the archer. You name them softly, not for memory's sake, but for companionship. It feels like someone is up there, watching too. The Gobi has mountains. Few know that. They rise in the distance like questions, jagged, snow-lined, ancient. Not majestic like the Himalayas. Not towering, but proud, silent. You walk toward them slowly, not out of necessity, but out of curiosity. The terrain shifts again. Stone turns to clay. Sand gives way to boulders. You climb bit by bit. The camels grunt. You breathe harder. The wind returns here, stronger, less forgiving. It pushes you like a stubborn elder, telling you to earn your passage. The view from the ridge is something you don't try to capture. No sketches, no photos. You just stand there, look, and breathe. The sky stretches wider than you thought possible. The clouds move in slow herds. The valleys below ripple with light and dust. In that moment, you feel both tiny and infinite. There's ice here too, even in summer, in the shadows of certain slopes where the sun doesn't reach. Small frozen pools, tucked in the belly of a cliff. You touch one once just the edge, with a fingertip. It stings, sharp and real. You laugh softly, because it feels like a joke the desert is telling just to you. A secret, a contradiction. Sometimes you hear wolves. You're not sure how many. Not close, but not far either. Their howls don't sound threatening, not like movies make them. It's more like a call home. You pause when you hear it. Look around. Wonder if they're watching you. You whisper something to the camels. They stay calm. So do you. You begin to notice patterns in the rocks. Stripes from centuries of weather. Fossils maybe. Carvings definitely. You once found a series of handprints on a stone wall. A cluster of palms pressed into clay long before your time. You placed your own hand on top. It didn't fit. That made you smile. The desert teaches humility. It doesn't shout lessons. It just lets you make mistakes, then waits. You learn not to chase shadows. You learn not to walk toward anything that glimmers too perfectly. You learn to trust the silence, even when it's uncomfortable. The camels handle the terrain better than you. They know where to step, what ground is loose, what slope is dangerous. You rely on them more than you admit. You talk to them more than you'd ever admit, especially when the landscape shifts into confusion and sameness. No landmarks, just horizon. And yet, you're never truly lost. You walk between dunes that look like frozen waves, past jagged canyons that seem drawn by a giant hand, across flats where the wind has carved shapes only visible from the sky. You imagine satellite images, seeing your route as a thin line winding through brown and red. You wonder who else has walked here, and why. There's peace in the discomfort, in the absence of sound, in the stretch between mountains and dust. You forget dates, you forget appointments, but you remember the way the clouds moved on the third morning after you lost your compass. You remember the sound of melting ice dripping onto a flat stone near Sats's feet. You remember the color of the dune you rested beside after 10 straight hours of walking. These are the moments that matter. That stay, no part of the Gobi, is yours. But every piece feels borrowed in good faith. The desert doesn't welcome you. It doesn't reject you. It just is. And you learn to be with it. Like an old friend who rarely speaks, but always listens. You begin to speak less yourself. The camels don't mind. They know your silence now. You reach a ridge where the wind whistles through the rocks. You hear music in it. You hum along. By the time night falls again, You've seen frost, felt heat, walked through sand, gravel, and ice. You've stood on peaks and crossed flats. You've been part of something wordless, something larger. You settle beside the camels. Pull your blanket tight. Watch the sky change color one last time. And you sleep, knowing that tomorrow the Gobi will change again. But you'll follow, and you'll understand. You stop craving full meals after the first week. Not because your hunger disappears, but because it changes, shifts into something quieter, slower, more manageable. It no longer roars. It waits, like a familiar ache behind your ribs. Always there, but patient. The Gobi teaches you that survival doesn't come from fullness. It comes from just enough. Water is not abundant. Even when your route runs close to seasonal streams, you treat every drop like a promise that might break. Your hands know the shape of the water skin by memory now. The texture of cracked leather, the faint scent of goatskin oil. You check it often, not because you think it leaked, but because it's the kind of reassurance you need to keep going. You sip, not drink. 3 sips at dawn, 3 more around midday. A little before sleep, if the air is dry enough to peel your throat. The camels drink more than you do, but not by much. They've learned the rhythm too. They know when they're allowed to stop, when they're permitted to indulge. And even then, they pace themselves. You admire them for that. The thirst never truly disappears. It becomes part of your breath, a slight dryness at the back of your mouth, a hollow coolness at the base of your tongue. You learn tricks. Press your tongue to the roof of your mouth. Swirl saliva slowly. Breathe through your nose. The body adjusts. The mind adapts. Meals are small, sometimes smaller than you'd like to admit. Hard cakes made from flour and lard, flattened like stones and baked until they crack at the edges. They taste like earth, and history, and endurance. You eat them slowly. Chew until your jaw tires. Let the dryness fade into something edible. Dried meat is your companion. Thick slices of goat or camel, salted and sun-cured. It's tough, difficult to tear, but packed with life. You keep it in a cloth pouch, tied with twine, tucked near your belt where the sun won't cook it again. Each piece is rationed like time. A single strip might last an hour, might last a day. You've dug for roots before, not because you were desperate, but because the desert offered you a hint. Little green sprouts poking through dry soil, signals of life hiding beneath. You dig carefully, fingers acting like tools, palms blistering in exchange for something bitter and damp. The root isn't delicious, but it's real. It reminds you that sustenance isn't always satisfying. Sometimes it's just enough. There are days you feel light, not floaty or free, just light, like your body has reduced itself to basics. Muscle, bone, and will. You move slower, but more deliberately. You're not wasting energy chasing excess. You're using just what you need. Sometimes you dream of bread, not flatbread, real bread. Soft, warm, rising, with steam. You wake with your mouth open, hoping the scent is real, but it's not. That's okay. You let the dream linger, the way you let the taste of dried meat linger on your tongue after dinner. Cooking happens less than people think. Fires are precious. Fuel is limited. You boil water when the camels need extra warmth, not for flavor. Tea, when you have it, is strong and smoky. Leaves steeped until the water darkens, sometimes with butter, sometimes plain. It doesn't matter. It's warm. That's enough. You once rationed food too tightly, waiting for a resupply that never came. It taught you something important. Starvation arrives slowly in the desert, not as a crisis, but as a decline. You didn't faint. You didn't collapse. You just started thinking slower, seeing less, forgetting more. That scared you. You vowed never to ration beyond reason again. Now you keep an emergency bundle wrapped in red cloth, tucked deep in your gear. You've never opened it, but knowing it's there eases you. You talk less when hungry. Words take energy. You find yourself humming more. Not for others, there are no others, but for balance. A way to measure time between bites. A way to distract from the echo of an empty stomach. The camels seem to understand. They don't complain when portions shrink. They chew sand sometimes, not to eat it, but to trick their bodies into movement. You learned that from Satsa. You started mimicking the habit once, pressing grains between your teeth to remind yourself that your mouth still worked. It didn't help much, but it gave you something to do. You foraged when forced, shrubs with waxy leaves, berries in dry hollows, sometimes mushrooms. Rare, you cook those always, never raw. The desert can poison you without meaning to. Salt is the most important thing. Not sugar, not spice, salt. You carry it in a stitched pouch, refilled whenever trade allows. You sprinkle it on meat. You mix it into your tea. You dab it on your wrists if you're sweating too much. It keeps you whole. There are days when your hunger feels alive, like something curled inside you, waiting. You don't fear it. You greet it. Say hello. Treat it like a guest who arrived without warning. You share space. You breathe together. You walk together. You learn the difference between wanting and needing. You want rice, vegetables, fish, eggs. You need protein, salt, and water. And that need becomes the anchor. Every now and then, someone passes your path. A traveler, a merchant, another tender moving livestock east. You trade. A pouch of root tea for a strip of dried fruit. A carving knife for 3 onion bulbs. You eat them whole, raw, your hands sticky, eyes closed, grateful. Gratitude becomes a meal of its own. You mark time by your eating. Not by clocks, not by calendars. Before the last meat, you say, or after the 3rd cake. Time stretches between rations. Each meal is a boundary, a waypoint. You once fasted intentionally, 5 days, just to learn your limits. You didn't break, but your dreams shifted. You saw colors you'd forgotten, heard laughter you didn't recognize. You learned that hunger opens doors, not always welcome ones, but honest. You write small notes in a leather-bound journal, lists of meals, recipes you hope to try. You describe the taste of onions so vividly that you can smell it from the page. You sketch a roasted bird you'll likely never eat again, not for sadness, but for memory. Memory feeds the soul. Sometimes you sing old songs from market days, tunes about feasts and family. The camels seem to perk up. Maybe they remember too. Or maybe they just like your voice. You chew gum root sometimes. Bitter, stringy, but calming. It keeps your jaw moving, keeps your thoughts anchored. And when the hunger presses in too tightly, when water runs low, when your body aches, you don't panic. You breathe. You whisper. You walk forward. Because out here, hunger is not an emergency. It's just another companion. And you've learned how to live with it. You stop expecting relief. The wind has a rhythm all its own, and it doesn't care about comfort. It doesn't rest when you rest. It doesn't soften when you beg. It's always moving, always scraping. It lives here. You're just passing through. There are no walls between you and the sky, no forests to break the gusts, no cities to slow them down. The Gobi is flat in ways that make you feel exposed, and the wind knows it. It finds you before you finish packing your gear. It sneaks through the seams of your coat, finds the holes in your boots, wraps itself around your face like a coarse scarf made of sand. By the 3rd day, your lips are cracked. You've tried oil, wax, cloth. They help for an hour, maybe 2. But the dryness always returns. It builds in layers. A tightness across your mouth. A sting when you eat. A pulse when you smile. You smile less now. The sun makes it worse. A bright, sharp heat with no shade, no mercy. You squint so often you feel it in your temples. Your skin changes, not just color, but texture. It darkens unevenly. Scorched by sunlight, polished raw by wind. You don't bleed like a wound. You bleed like erosion. Slowly, softly. From the corners of your mouth, from the edge of your nostrils, from the spots where your mask rubs too often. Grit finds its way into everything. Your ears itch constantly. You dig with the tip of a cloth. Twist gently. Try not to damage the skin inside. It helps, but only briefly. The wind returns, always. A fresh supply of sand to fill the emptiness. Your eyes tear up when it's strongest, not from emotion, but defense. It's the body trying to cleanse itself. You blink and smear grit across your cheeks. You stop wiping. It's easier to let the tears fall and carry the dust with them. You learn to keep your eyes low. Looking up means surrendering them to the elements. The worst is when it gets under your clothing. Grit between your shoulder blades. In the crease behind your knees. You shake out your garments every morning. You check your socks twice. You still find sand in places it shouldn't be. Always, even weeks after the storm has passed. Boots fill with it. By midday, you're walking on a shifting cushion, not soft like snow, but uneven, abrasive. You feel it grind against your soles. You try to ignore it, until it starts to hurt. Then you stop, shake them out again. You feel relief for maybe 20 steps. Then it returns. Your hands suffer most. You use them for everything. You tug ropes. You scoop grain. You hold reins, and the wind never spares them. The backs of your fingers chap first, then the spaces between your knuckles, then your palms, not dry, broken. The skin splits when you lift something heavy. You bleed, but you don't flinch. That's just how it is. You wear gloves sometimes. Thick leather, worn from years of use. They help, until the wind gets inside them too. Then they become a trap. Warm at first, then itchy, then painful. You take them off and stretch your fingers in the cold. The air stings, but it's cleaner than the inside of the glove. There is no escape from the wind, no hiding place. You can duck behind the camels for a moment, but they shift. They move. They snort and jostle. You are not their concern. The wind hits you again. It whistles through your tent at night, even when it's tied tight. You plug the gaps with cloth, stack stones along the base. You wake up anyway, not from cold, but from sound. It hums, howls, scratches against the canvas like claws. You cover your ears. Doesn't help. The sound isn't outside. It's inside you now. Sometimes you dream of silence, not peace, just stillness. No wind against your cheeks. No sand in your teeth. No flapping of cloth. Just quiet. But when you wait, the wind is waiting. It has sculpted you. You run your fingers across your own face one evening. You feel the raised patches, the raw skin, the tiny scabs forming along the edges. You press gently and wince. This is the cost of travel. The toll, not in coins, not in fatigue, but in skin. The camels are better built for it. Their eyes are narrow, protected by long lashes. Their fur thick, designed to resist movement. They blink slowly when the gusts come. They don't complain. You envy them for that. You wrap your head twice now, once with cloth, and again with a shawl. You tuck the ends beneath your collar. It helps, but you still feel it. The wind slides through, finds the gaps. Always. There was a day, early in your journey, when the wind blew so violently that you couldn't stand. You crouched behind a dune, arms wrapped around your knees, forehead pressed to your sleeves. You cried, but no one saw. That was the day you stopped fighting it. That was the day you decided to endure instead. The sunburn comes in waves. First, the tightness across your cheeks, then the itch, then the flake. You peel it off slowly. Your fingers blackened at the tips from grit, your nails cracked. You don't worry about appearance anymore. You just want comfort. At night, you massage oil into your skin. Goat fat mixed with herbs. It smells strong, pungent, but it works. A little. Enough. You murmur to yourself as you do it. A habit now. A ritual. A way of claiming your body again. The wind follows you. It shapes the ground. It shapes your spirit. You begin to read it like language. Fast means cold is coming. Slow means storm is ending. High-pitched means ice nearby. You can guess direction now, just by the way it touches your neck. Your face no longer looks like it did. You see it sometimes, reflected in the metal of your bowl. Dark, weathered, thinner. Your lips red, always dry. Your nose marked from the mask. You don't flinch. You nod. It's your desert face, the one that belongs to this place. You are not broken, just weathered. And the wind respects that. A night in the Gobi doesn't fall gently. It settles, like sand poured from a high place, sudden and complete. One moment, the sky burns pale orange. The next, the light is gone. You don't notice the transition. You just feel the weight of darkness pressing down from above. No lamps, no nearby homes. Only stars, and even they feel far away. You sleep near the camels, not beside them for warmth, although the cold demands it. You sleep near them because it's safer that way. The desert can be empty all day and still crawl with danger after sundown. You've heard too many stories. Traders robbed at knife point by men who knew the terrain better than maps. Herders who woke to blood and silence. Tracks vanishing into the mountains. One whisper says it was wolves. Another says men. A few insist snow leopards, the ghost cats, the silent ones. You believe all of it. Every sound after dark could be something. The creak of a harness, the snap of twine, the shuffle of hooves. You train your ears to separate the natural from the foreign. You learn the pitch of a camel's breath, the rhythm of their murmurs as they settle into sleep. Anything outside that rhythm sets you upright, hand already reaching for the knife, tucked beneath your blanket. It's not a fancy blade, not ceremonial, just a short steel edge with a worn handle. The grip fits your palm like it was shaped for it. You've sharpened it more times than you've counted stars. Sometimes you wonder if it has enough, if that one tool can truly protect you from whatever waits beyond the light. You decide it has to be. You tie the camels loosely, not just so they don't wander, but so they can move, react. You want them to wake if something approaches. You trust their instincts. In this place, they're more alert than you. Myanmar grunts when wind changes direction. Satsa shifts her legs when the air carries an unfamiliar scent. Book snorts at shadows, ears twitching toward movement too distant for you to see. You build no fire tonight, not because you don't want warmth, but because light attracts attention. Better to blend into the black, better to listen and wait. You wrap yourself in a thick coat, patched over years, edges frayed where the thread wore thin. The lining smells of smoke and old wool. It's familiar, grounding. The stars are endless. You tilt your head once and realize how open the sky is. Too open. It makes you feel small in a way that isn't comforting. The stars are cold here, not warm like they are near cities or villages. No twinkle. Just sharp white dots, silent and fixed. They don't blink. They don't care. They watch. You can feel it, like their gaze pulls something from your chest, like they record everything and keep it quiet. You name them sometimes. The three on the left, the ones in that crooked line, you call them the Watchers. The bright one near the horizon, just above the shoulder of your camel, is the flame. You whisper these names not for superstition, but to keep loneliness at bay. If the stars have names, they can be spoken to. If they're spoken to, they might listen. But you never ask for anything. Not out here. Asking feels greedy. You sleep light, never more than an hour at a time. Your body has learned this schedule. It stirs from rest before your mind can dream. You sit up. You scan the horizon. You listen. Then you lie down again. That's the pattern. You breathe in soft cycles, the kind that conserve energy, the kind that don't attract predators. The desert floor grows colder by the hour. Your blanket helps, but it's not enough. So you curl close to the camels, not leaning on them, but resting just within the warmth of their breath. You watch the steam rise from their nostrils. You count the seconds between each exhale. Slow, steady, solid. Their breath becomes your clock. Their silence becomes your permission to rest. You've seen tracks before, just beyond camp. Paw prints, wide, deep, spaced like something heavy walked gently, deliberately. The shape doesn't match dogs, doesn't match hooves. You don't speak of it, not to others, not to yourself. Naming it gives it form. And some things in the Gobi are better left unnamed. One morning, just before dawn, Satsa refused to rise. She stood still, legs locked, eyes forward, ears raised, trembling. You looked. You saw nothing. But you didn't press her. You waited. The wind shifted. Something unseen moved at the edge of your camp. You didn't investigate. You waited longer. And then, slowly, she relaxed. Her muscles softened, her stance lowered. She walked forward. You remember that moment often. It reminds you that the desert doesn't always show its teeth. Sometimes it passes by silently, letting you live. You keep your knife sharp every day. Even when there's peace, you slice reeds with it, trim rope, peel meat. You want it to know your grip well. You want it ready, not just useful. You tuck it away at the same angle, same position, every night. Habit is safety. Your ears become more important than your eyes. Sound travels far in the Gobi, farther than you expect. You can hear steps from 30 meters away if the wind's calm, voices if they're careless, the hiss of movement, the click of stone against paw. You listen, not just with attention, with commitment. You stop thinking about other things. You let sound guide your thoughts. The camels whisper, not in words, in movement, in rhythm, the shift of legs, the flick of tails, the low, guttering hum that comes from their throat when they feel something nearby. It's not alarm, not panic, just communication. You learn to interpret it. You dream rarely. And when you do, it's of quiet things. A bowl of soup, a warm room, a face you only partially remember. But the dreams never last. The wind interrupts. A camel shifts. A star vanishes. You wake. Your sleep is built in fragments. But those fragments are enough. You've stopped fearing the leopard. If it comes, it will come. You'll stand. You'll raise your knife. You'll protect what you can. But until then, you breathe. You whisper. You watch the stars. You're part of this now. The desert has accepted your presence. Not welcomed it, but tolerated it. And that's something. You close your eyes again. The camels murmur beside you. Your knife rests near your hand. The stars remain cold. And the night listens. You stop expecting voices. It's not sadness, not really. Just absence. Quiet that stretches longer than memory. At first, you count the days since you last saw someone. 3, then 5, then 11. But counting begins to lose meaning when nothing interrupts the stillness. Eventually, you stop. The desert doesn't speak in words, but you begin to listen anyway. You talk to your shadow. It doesn't answer. but it stays close, moves when you move, stops when you stop. You catch yourself murmuring to it while you pack your gear, while you boil water, while you watch dust drift across the horizon. Still here, you say to it softly, still walking. It doesn't speak, but it doesn't leave either. That's something. There are no mirrors here, no reflections. The face you remember becomes abstract. Sometimes, when the sun is high and the sand casts silhouettes sharp and strange, you walk beside shapes that feel taller than you should be. Wider, older. You wonder if you've changed. You wonder if loneliness reshapes the body as much as it reshapes the heart. The camels are there, of course, but even they fall silent. They sleep with heads tucked and legs folded. When they grunt, you respond. When they blink slowly, you do too. You imitate their rhythms. You become something like them, patient, deliberate, resistant to panic. You whisper more now, not just to the wind or the stars, but to the emptiness around you. Short sentences, sometimes poems, sometimes pieces of songs you barely remember. Good morning, you say to the dunes. Easy now, you say to the wind. You don't expect a reply. That's not the point. Time doesn't pass normally. The sun moves, sure, but you stop tracking it. Morning feels the same as afternoon. Night stretches without shape. You sleep when your eyes blur. You eat when your stomach pulses. You measure days by the wear on your boots and the thickness of your beard. Your thoughts slow, not dull, just unhurried. Memories unfold like paper cranes, simple and clear. You remember small things. The sound of rice steaming in your mother's kitchen, the color of market stalls in early spring, the way someone once said your name with too much gentleness. These recollections become sacred. You hold them close. You replay them. You begin noticing patterns in nothing. The way the sand piles near the corners of your tent. The direction the wind curls when the air turns cold. The way stars reposition themselves across the sky, like characters in a long play. These patterns feel important, like clues. You write them down sometimes. You sketch symbols beside them. You imagine meaning. Loneliness doesn't hurt. Not in the way people think. It doesn't crush you. It expands you. Your thoughts stretch further. Your senses become sharper. You hear insects you never used to notice. You smell moisture in the soil before the rain arrives. You sense movement before it happens. You begin treating silence like prayer. You sit near the camels and watch the sky. You let your breath settle into rhythm with theirs. You hold stillness like a glass, careful not to spill it. You consider silence the most honest companion you've ever known. There was a day, maybe day 30, maybe day 70, when you found a footprint that wasn't yours. Not fresh, faint, but human. You stared at it, didn't move, didn't follow. Just stood beside it like you'd found a relic, a message, proof that someone else had walked here. You spoke to it. Hello. Then you walked away. You begin naming things that don't have names. A particular dune becomes the shoulder. A bend in the trail becomes the elbow. You assign identity to the landscape, so you're not the only one. You whisper greetings. You again, you say as you pass the ridge. Looking well. You add to the cracked boulder. You smile sometimes when you do this. It doesn't feel crazy. It feels respectful. There are hours when the wind rises just enough to mimic a voice. It hisses through the camel straps. It dances across the mouth of your kettle. You pause, listen, not because you think it's someone, but because you want it to be. You answer anyway. I know, you say softly. Me too. Your journal fills up with fragments. Not full pages, just lines. Clouds moved west. Camel seemed sad today. Felt warmth again, not sure why. You read these notes at night. They don't mean much to anyone else, but they feel true to you. They mark your time. They anchor your hours. You build little altars, not with worship in mind, but with intention. A few stacked stones, a tied piece of cloth, a fossil placed on a ridge. These become places to pause. You bow your head when you pass them. You think quiet things. You thank the wind. You thank the silence. Loneliness becomes sacred, not joyful, not painful, just deep. You begin to believe in things you can't see, not gods, not ghosts, just presence. You feel watched sometimes, but not in fear, in connection, like the desert knows you're there, like the sky keeps a record. You once carved a face into a tree trunk you found in the high plains. It was weathered and cracked, barely alive, but you gave it eyes, a mouth. You sat beside it for an hour and told it your story, from the beginning, all the way to now. You whispered every word. You cried softly near the end. The tree said nothing, but it didn't fall. You took that as permission to continue. Eventually, you accept that isolation isn't punishment. It's practice. You are rehearsing quiet. You are mastering stillness. You sleep with your shadow now, sometimes beneath moonlight, sometimes wrapped in blackness, so thick your hand disappears. You wake to nothing, speak anyway, and the desert listens. Always. You see their silhouettes first, far off, dark against the pale gold of late afternoon. Camels, riders, the sway of cargo. Not fast-moving, just steady, like time. They follow no trail you recognize, but the desert seems to allow them. The wind doesn't fight them. The sand doesn't shift beneath their feet. They arrive as if summoned, but never loudly. You straighten your back, brush the dust from your coat. There's no performance here, but you stand a little taller when you see others. It's been weeks since you last heard another human voice. You feel the shape of language in your throat again, brittle, unused, waiting. The traders don't rush. They crest the ridge slowly, animals heavy with goods wrapped in cloth and hide, silk tied in tight bundles, firewood strapped like ribs against saddles, salt packed in small stone pots, all of it precious, all of it older than currency. They don't call out, no greetings, just nods, a glance shared across the space between you. That's enough. There are no need for introductions here. You both understand the conditions, the silence, the scarcity, the way the desert forces humility. You meet in the center, not of camp, but of understanding. You nod. One of them lifts a jug, sloshes it. Water. You reach into your pouch, unwrap a bundle of dried meat. No one sets prices. No one haggles. You both know the worth of what's being offered. Trade here isn't business. It's survival. A balancing of needs. One trader speaks, just a word or two. Cold in the north. You nod. Dust storms in the west, he says later. You nod again. That's the news. Not politics, not cities. Just weather. Roots. Conditions. The things that matter when everything you carry is too heavy to waste. They offer cloth. You choose a strip dyed deep red, stitched with old symbols. You hold it gently, run your thumb across the edge. It smells faintly of smoke and dried herbs. Maybe it was packed near food, maybe near prayer. You don't ask. You give a carved hook in return, bone-shaped by fire, polished smooth. It will hold a kettle or tether a beast. It's not beautiful, but it works. There's firewood, dry, compact, enough for a night or two. You exchange rope and a metal tin. The air shifts slightly as the sun dips lower. You move with quiet efficiency. No smiles, no suspicion, just purpose. A younger trader glances at your camels. Satsa looks back, calm, unreadable. Good herd, he says finally. You nod. Strong, you reply. It's the closest thing to compliment you've heard in weeks. You don't ask their names. You don't tell your own. These moments are brief, sacred. To name something would anchor it. And desert things are meant to pass. Someone mentions wolves near the pass. Another speaks of a dry lake bed now cracked open with salt veins. You nod. You note these things quietly. Tonight, you will mark them in your journal. They share bread. Real bread. Soft, if slightly stale. You tear a piece. Chew slowly. The taste hits differently. You feel warmth in your chest. Not from the food, from the act. As the sun sets, they gather their beasts, tighten their packs. You don't ask where they go next. North, maybe. West, toward stone cities. Toward trade posts that blink with fire at night. You watch them mount slowly, cloaks wrapped tight. Their camels grunt, legs stretching. The wind rises as they move. Dust kicks behind them. You raise a hand. One of them nods. That's goodbye. Enough. They disappear over the ridge. Not suddenly, just slowly. Like mist, like memory. You stare at the place where they vanished, wondering if they were real. The goods remain. The bread remains, but the presence fades. The desert already erases their footprints. The wind reclaims the space. You feel smaller again. You sit by your camels, watching the stars return. Satsa shifts her weight. Book huffs. Myegmar sleeps. The red cloth you traded for flutters softly. You tuck it away, and the silence resumes. You learn to stop being startled. The first time, you hesitate. A ridge of pale sand, the morning wind brushing softly past your boots, and there it is. A curve of bone, just barely breaking the surface. Smooth, dry, and clean. A fragment of something that once stood upright in this same wind. You kneel, not quickly, slowly. You press your fingers into the sand near its edge, uncover it gently. A piece of skull, maybe camel, too large to be dog. Not shaped like a human, though you've seen those too. The desert doesn't hide things. It displays them plainly. Death isn't treated like shame out here. It's woven into the landscape, sun-bleached and silent. You walk a little farther and find ribs laid out in a perfect arc, like the frame of a forgotten tent. Clean as ivory. Hollow like old reeds. The bones don't smell. They don't feel cruel. They just exist. Part of the terrain. Sometimes it's tools. Clay cups shattered into 6 pieces, half buried in a dry riverbed where floods haven't reached in years. You spot the curve of a handle and dig with your hands. The shards scatter easily, worn so smooth they could pass for river stones. But they're human-made, carved by someone who sat here once, maybe under shade. You hold a piece against the sunlight. The clay is thin, strong once, now fragile. A boot shows up next. Cracked leather, missing a sole. You pick it up slowly, turn it over, shake out sand that settled inside like a second foot. The stitching is mostly intact. It's not your size, and there's no matching pair. You set it back down, not out of disrespect, but because it belongs here now. The person who wore it is gone. Maybe lost, maybe finished. But the boot remains. There are straps sometimes, camel gear, harness ropes, rusted hooks. Not useful anymore, but recognizable. You can trace their outlines and know where they were meant to sit, what they were meant to carry. You close your eyes and see a herd walking years ago. You don't know who led it, but you feel like you could. You've learned the pace, the weight. You find bones farther from paths. In places the wind sculpts into forgotten corners. In gorges where water once ran, where silence now echoes stronger. Human ribs once, not whole, but enough to understand. You look for signs. Fabric, buckles, a ring. Nothing. Just the body of someone who didn't return home. You don't speak. You don't disturb. You mark the location in your journal, just in case someone might want to know. But no one usually does. Every discovery changes you a little. You don't cry. You don't panic. You think quietly. You remember how thin the line is between walking and being found. You drink water slower that day. You tighten your scarf more carefully. The camels sense it too. They sniff when you find something new. Snort softly when you pause longer than usual. They don't judge, but they remember. You feel it in how they walk. Lighter, more cautious. Some bones are ancient. You know that because they don't crumble when you touch them. You brush sand off vertebrae like they're artifacts in a museum. But this isn't display. It's exposure. The desert offers no curtains. Just open air and bright light. Every relic is sun-kissed, bleached clean, no rot, no scent. Just the shape, honest and final. Sometimes it's just a single fragment, a knuckle bone, a jaw, a tooth turned yellow at the edges. You pick it up, examine it, roll it between your fingers, then put it back. It's not yours. You wonder about those people sometimes, where they were going, what they carried, whether they were alone, like you, whether they wanted to be. Their stories are unfinished, but the desert tells enough. You fill in the rest with silence. It's not all grim. Sometimes you find joy buried in the dust, a pendant, a toy, a spoon curved like a question mark. You laugh once when you find a saddle painted in green. Most of the paint is gone, but that someone chose color means they believed in beauty. Even out here, you keep some things, not many. A shard that fits in your palm, a coin worn flat, a button carved from horn. You carry them not for value, but for memory, for company. You've never found a full skeleton. The desert doesn't preserve the whole. It offers fragments, messages, clues. It asks you to read softly. Sometimes the wind uncovers something you passed days ago. You recognize the skull. Now the jaw is visible. Now the teeth. The desert reveals on its own time. You respect that. You don't tell many people about the bones. You know, they won't understand. They'll think it's morbid. You don't think so. You think it's honest. You think it's part of what this place means. You walk past a half-buried pack one morning, leather stiff and curled at the corners. You hesitate. Then you leave it. Whatever it held, it already gave. You sleep a little differently after days like these, not out of fear, but with awareness. You tuck your knife closer. You watch the stars longer. You whisper your own name a few times, just to remind the air. The Gobi doesn't bury. It remembers. And now, so do you. You never get used to it. No matter how many times it happens, no matter how much the horizon pretends to be still, a sandstorm always feels like a betrayal. One moment, you see for miles. The dunes roll gently beneath a pale sky. Your camels move in rhythm. The air smells like stone warmed by sun. And then it turns. Fast, sharp. The color comes first. Not the scent, not the sound. Just color. The air shifts from soft beige to something angry. Something yellow, sickly, unnatural. You glance sideways, and the edge of the sky is thick. Not clouds, not fog. Just sand, lifted high and spinning. A curtain drawn across the world. You tighten your scarf. Not slowly, not gently. It's instinct. You wrap your head quickly, press cloth over your mouth. The wind is faster now, pushing before you're ready. You crouch, low, near your camels. They grunt, restless, but not terrified. Satsa shifts her feet. Book snorts. My Egmar plants himself firm. You whisper to them. Not for comfort, but because your voice steadies you. Then, everything goes blind. The light disappears. The wind screams. The sand hits you sideways. Tiny grains that bite the skin, fill the eyes, scrape the ears, choke the breath. You squeeze your eyelids shut, squint through lashes, bend your face into your coat. There's no direction, no path, no certainty. You could be inches from where you stood. You could be far. You don't know. It roars, not like thunder, like rage. It grabs at every loose buckle, every strap, every fold of cloth. You hold tight. You squat lower. You can't move. You wait. The camels bunch together. They lower their heads. One grunts again, nervous but steady. You reach out, touch Satsa's side, just to feel something solid, something that stays. You feel her tremble beneath fur, not fear, just readiness. She's weathered this before. You count your breath, not numbers, just intervals. Inhale through cloth. Exhale softly. No panic, just breath. You become smaller, tighter, pressing your body into the earth as if that will protect you. You whisper again. Steady, still here. Wait. The world vanishes. You try to remember what it looked like before. The dune to your left, the stone ridge far behind. The footprint you left hours ago. All of it gone. All of it swallowed. You close your eyes and picture it, not to map a path, but to hold your memory still. The sound is everywhere, inside you, around you. Like the desert itself is yelling, not words, just wind. The storm doesn't speak language, it speaks motion. Time bends. You don't know if it's been minutes or more. Your legs cramp. Your throat dries. The grit forces its way into every seam, every crevice. You don't fight it. You accept it. And then, slowly, almost shyly, the wind softens. Not quiet, just less. You open one eye. Blurred. The air is still thick, but not violent. You uncurl. You raise your head. Dust still spins, but gently. The camels lift their necks. You stand, slowly, bones stiff. The storm doesn't end with drama. It fades, tiptoes away like it regrets the damage. You shake your coat. Dust billows. You blink. Grit clings to your lashes. Your tongue tastes earth. The horizon reappears. Not the same horizon. New. Rearranged. The dunes shifted while you hid. The trail's gone. The flat you rested near is now a ripple. The markers you built are buried, but the camels are still here. You check them one by one. Mayagmar's rope loosened, but he didn't run. Satsa is coated in powder, but unhurt. Book looks annoyed. You brush aside. He huffs, turns his head. You set camp again. Not because you plan to, because you need to reset. You boil water. Shake grit from your boots. Tie new markers in the sand. You write a few lines in your journal. Storm from the west. Dunes moved. No damage. You don't need to say more. The sun peeks through, dim and filtered. You stretch your arms. Roll your shoulders. The silence returns, thick and watchful. Your hands are raw from gripping too hard. Your neck aches from crouching. Your lips sting from the scrape of grit. But you're still here. And the desert has changed again. You don't wake up one morning knowing how to track. It isn't knowledge that arrives like a gift. It's something that creeps into you over time, through repeated walks, through small moments where attention is the only thing that keeps you moving in the right direction. The desert never teaches through instruction. It teaches through need. In the beginning, you miss things. You look out across the sand and see sameness. You look at the gravel flats and see only gray. Your boots crunch along the surface and leave prints you think will last. But by afternoon, a wind wipes them away. You feel disoriented. You ask yourself how anyone can navigate this place. Then, quietly, your eyes sharpen. Not all at once, just in slivers. You spot your first sign when your camel hesitates. Satsa stops mid-step, her ears pulled back slightly. You crouch beside her, unsure what she's responding to. That's when you see it. A single footprint, shallow, half filled with powder. Not yours. Not hers, not recent. You clear the dust gently with your palm. The heel is distinct, the stride angled southeast. Someone passed here before you did. You blink slowly. Then you begin to understand. The desert isn't empty. It's full, but its messages are quiet. You start noticing droppings, fresh, dark, slightly moist. You recognize the color, the texture. Goat, not wild, herded. You step carefully, scanning for more. You find 5 scattered in a line. That tells you someone camped nearby, maybe days ago. You feel no urgency to follow. You just file the knowledge away. Twigs appear where no trees grow. You hold them between your fingers, note the break. Sharp, recent. A boot snapped it, not wind. You look around and find a trail. Faint. Dots of broken branches, flecks of disturbed sand, and a strip of cloth caught on a thorn bush. It's blue, worn. You tie it to your pack. A marker, not of danger, of presence. The camels teach you more. They look before you do. They sniff at dust that appears ordinary. You follow. You find cracked earth, patterned slightly, where hooves once stood still for hours. You touch the space. It's cool. It's old, but not forgotten. Sometimes you find a smooth depression, oval, subtle. The edge crumbles lightly. A sleeping pit. Someone rested here or something. You measure the space with your eyes. Human? Possibly. Large enough. No bones, no blanket scraps, just the dent. You mark the coordinates in your journal. You don't investigate deeper. The desert doesn't like its past disturbed. You develop new habits. You walk slower in the morning, when shadows are longest, when prints stretch wide and direction is easier to see. You look not just at the ground, but at the way sand moves around objects, curled drifts against rocks, pockets formed beneath bushes. If something touched the space, the wind would respond. You read the wind through the sand. The sky doesn't help. It offers light, sure, but no guidance. No angles that point the way. What helps are the lines in the ground. A cracked trail leading across a basin, fossilized footprints layered on top of one another. You step carefully, preserving each. You stop trusting maps. They show you where things once were. The desert shows you where things are now. Some days, the signs come easily. You find a trail of prints, human and camel, weaving into the hills. You follow loosely, not out of curiosity, but respect. You want to know who walks this land with you. You never find them. You never expect to. But you follow their rhythm and learn their choices. Other days, nothing speaks. You wonder. You scan. You whisper. The desert remains silent. You nod. That's fine. It chooses when to speak. You learn to interpret temperature too. Not of air, but of the ground. Warm prints mean recent passage. Cold ones are memories. You touch them gently, like touching a photograph. There's a beauty in tracking, a relationship. You begin talking to the signs. Left 5 minutes ago, you say to a hoof print. Took the narrow pass, you add to a scuff mark. Tired, you note when the stride shortens. You never chase, you never interrupt. You follow, with patience, with care. You begin teaching your camels to pause when you do. They respond. They watch. They wait. You whisper their names when you spot something unusual, a pattern in the gravel, a pile of small stones arranged too neatly. Someone left this, you say to Satsa. She blinks as if agreeing. You track animals too, foxes, beetles, snakes. The small ones are hardest. Tiny footprints vanishing after 3 steps. You crouch low. You follow with your eyes. You see the slight indent where the snake slid sideways. You mark the direction. It becomes a meditation, a ritual. You rise each morning and scan the horizon not for landmarks, but for anomalies. You turn circles slowly. You watch the light bend across the sand. You look for motion too faint for sound. Sometimes you find writing scratched into stone, carvings, dates, initials, messages left for no one or for anyone. You read them softly. You reply, not aloud, in your journal. You copy the marks. You leave your own beside them, not as graffiti, but as connection. Tracking changes how you see everything. A stone isn't just a stone. It's a marker, a memory, a witness. A pile of feathers means something slept here. A broken stick means something struggled. You begin marking your own trail less carefully. Not because you're careless, but because you want someone else to read it one day. Maybe they'll see your footprints and whisper your name, even if they don't know it. You once followed a trail for half a day, footprints spaced apart, uneven. You saw where the person stumbled, where they paused, where they turned back. At the ridge, the prints stopped. You stood there, wondering where they'd gone. The desert offered no answer. You didn't need one. Tracking isn't solution. It's story. You now believe the desert is a living map, not drawn in ink or carved with symbols, but written in movement, in traces, in silence. You close your eyes one evening and review your day. A cracked twig, a worn stone, a disturbed trail, 3 hoof marks, 1 boot print, all pieces, all notes. You sleep well that night because you didn't just walk. You read, you listened, and the desert spoke back. It starts with a twitch, not panic, not noise. Just a shift in weight, a glance held too long, a foot pressed against the earth like it's waiting for something to rise. You don't notice the pattern at first. You think it's discomfort or distraction or maybe boredom. But the desert doesn't allow for boredom. And these camels don't twitch without reason. They know things, not through logic or tools or maps, but through something deeper, a rhythm born of years walking this land, a quiet thread tied between their bones and the dust beneath them. They feel the Gobi in ways you never will, and over time, you learn to watch them more closely than you watch the horizon. Satsa lifts her head just slightly, ears angled toward wind that hasn't arrived yet. The air is still calm, cool, even, but her breath grows short. Her front legs don't tuck beneath her the way they usually do. You pause your packing. Myanmar snorts and turns in a tight circle. Book refuses his morning grain. You don't ask questions anymore. You stop. You wait. By afternoon, the wind is shrieking. The start of the sandstorm. One of those sudden ones, the kind that shifts the ground, blurs the sky, empties your sense of direction. But you didn't walk into it, not this time. The camels told you to stay. So you listened, and you were spared. It's not magic. It's memory. Camels have walked this route longer than you have. Longer than your family has. Their ancestors crossed here when roads were myths and landmarks were prayers. They carry that history in their muscles, their breath, their gaze. You notice it again the day your joints ache and your chest tightens. You think it's cold or fatigue. But Satsa gives you a wide berth. Myanmar doesn't let you touch him. Book growls low in his throat, a sound you haven't heard before. That night, your temperature climbs. You burn quietly, tucked beneath your shawls, and the camels stay just far enough away. You recover in 2 days. They knew before you did. It changes how you move through the world. You stop assuming you know best. You stop forcing routes. You watch their legs, their breath, the way their eyes scan the rocks ahead. You've seen Satsa refuse a trail that looked easy, dry, flat, open. She wouldn't step forward. She planted herself like a tree. You listened, took another route. The canyon you skipped later collapsed under flash rain. The desert doesn't give warnings, but sometimes the camels do. Their reactions are subtle. But once you learn the language, it's fluent. Myanmar grumbles when he smells fire. Not close, but burning somewhere in the wind. You check the wind's direction and adjust. You never find the blaze. But the air shifts the next morning. Smoke touches the ridge you meant to cross. Book refuses to rest near a particular outcrop, a stone mound shaped like a sleeping beast. You try to guide him closer. He pulls back, head raised high, nostrils flaring. You walk the perimeter instead. Minutes later, a jackal slips from beneath the stones, eyes sharp, watching. It runs when it sees the herd. But you wouldn't have seen it in time. They're not psychic, they're observant. They read the Gobi like scripture. The land has signals, vibrations, scents, faint sounds that you barely register. The camels absorb them like breath. Their bodies react before their minds do. That's the kind of intelligence you learn to trust. Even strangers respect it. One trader crossed paths with you near dusk. He asked why you hadn't taken the shorter trail north. You gestured to Satsa. She didn't want to. He laughed softly, then grew quiet. Good, he said. There were raiders 2 nights ago. You didn't ask how he knew. He touched the base of his saddle, nodded toward his own camels. You understood. Raids happen quietly in the desert. Not with noise, with disappearance. A rider vanishes. A camp empties. A trail ends without reason. The camels sense these things before the danger touches you. When they gather tightly near nightfall, you keep your fire low. When they press toward one another in restless silence, you sharpen your knife. Once, Satsa woke you before dawn. A soft stomp near your bedroll. A quiet huff of air over your face. You opened your eyes and saw her shadow standing between you and the distant dunes. You followed her gaze and saw movement. Not human, not animal, just a ripple. You sat up, held your breath. The sand kept shifting, then paused, then returned. Gone. She didn't move until it did. You've stopped asking why. You just thank them softly each time. Good girl, you whisper near her ear. She blinks slowly. Her breath settles. When Book becomes quiet, truly quiet, you prepare for something. He's never silent without purpose. You double-check supplies, secure saddles, mark directions more carefully. It doesn't happen every time, but when it does, you feel ready. The Gobi listens to camels more than it listens to people. You see it in the way storms form behind their steps, the way heat breaks when they pause in unison, the way birds change direction when the herd changes posture. Your trust deepens. You no longer walk alone in the desert, even when no other people are near. Your herd speaks in its own language, and you've learned to follow, not with control, but with respect. The day fades and sighs. Wind settles, hooves rest. The sun drops behind the dunes like a curtain closing gently. It's not darkness that arrives first, but temperature. A sudden hush in the warmth. The kind that makes your breath puff in silver, and the camels fold their legs slowly, like laying down a prayer. You choose your spot with intention. It's not where the wind rushes, not where the rocks shift. It's where the stars will find you. You gather driftwood bleached and brittle, a few dry dung patties that crumble like old parchment, and build your fire with hands practiced in scarcity. The first flicker is always small. It barely holds against the cool. It stutters, trembles, then steadies. You feed it with patience. It is a fragile flame, but it is enough. You pour the water. The kettle whistles low, a soft sound, not shrill, more breath than song. The tea tastes of smoke and distance. You don't measure its strength. It carries the earth, the fire, the journey. You sip slowly, and then you say nothing. It's the rule of the fire. You do not speak unless you need to. Silence here is not empty. It's generous. It stretches across time, folds between stars, echoes through your bones. You feel it wrap around your shoulders, heavy as a cloak. You sit. You breathe. You listen. The camels sleep nearby. Their hum's a slow reminder that not everything stops moving in the night. Above, the stars are sharp, closer than dreams, brighter than memory. Some hang so low, you feel like you could drink them with your tea. Others blink behind thin wisps of cloud, distant but present. You find constellations you recognize, and others you don't. Stories not yours, but still spoken in light. You do not record this. No photograph. No journal. It belongs to this night alone. The Gobi at night speaks in silence. In creaks of cooling rock. In whispers of sand carried by unseen breeze. In the soft crackle of fire and the shifting of your thoughts. You've sat here before. On other journeys, in other years. And the nights always return this way, sacred and unhurried. There is no performance, no destination, just presence. It humbles you, not through grandeur, but through smallness. You feel how tiny your body is under such a sky, how ancient the desert seems, how young your worries become. You think of family, perhaps, or nothing at all. Sometimes the silence lets you empty completely, and that, too, is a gift. Tea cools, fire dims, but the hush remains. It invites reflection, not the kind that explains, but the kind that accepts. You remember a mistake made weeks ago and forgive it. You recall a kindness given long ago and honor it. You think of someone far away, no message needed, just thought, just warmth. Once, you heard a traveler say that nighttime in the desert is like the inside of a temple. No walls, no roof, but sacred all the same. You believe it. And so you sit longer than you meant to, not out of obligation, but out of reverence. Your breath steadies. The fire casts long shadows. The tea is gone. You do not move quickly. You fold your limbs slowly. Thank the flame. Cover the ashes. Let the stars be. Sleep comes not as a command, but as an invitation. And in your dreams, the silence continues. It walks with you, endlessly soft, endlessly wide. Not all loss feels like grief. Some of it is so quiet you barely notice. A name forgotten, a date erased. The way your handwriting changes, the way your speech slows. You become simpler in the desert, not emptier, but more distilled. It doesn't happen at once. The first mile feels exciting. The pack is fresh, the rhythm unfamiliar, your voice louder than it needs to be. You talk to the camels more than they care to hear. You try to name every mountain, count every star. You try to track things time, distance, purpose. But slowly, something unravels. You miss a birthday. Forget a city. The map folds and refolds until the creases blur the ink. You stop looking at it. Your fingertips harden. The softness that came from soap and screens disappears. Your nails chip. Your skin darkens and thickens, not as armor, but as belonging. You touch the earth differently, like it knows you, like it keeps track. Your voice shifts too. It becomes low, not tired, but respectful. Like the desert is a place for whispers. You don't shout across dunes. You don't sing for yourself. You let the wind carry sound. You become part of the hush. With every mile, you leave behind something. Your impatience, your worry, your need to fill silence. You forget things you thought were crucial. You stop craving answers. You let mysteries be. Your steps change, not just in pace, but in weight. You tread more carefully, not from fear, but from awareness. You notice more, not because you're trying, but because your mind isn't cluttered. A stone shifted, a ripple in the sand, the shadow of a bird. You begin to see the signs you used to miss. The camels lead. You follow. Sometimes the path loops. Sometimes it vanishes. But you keep walking. Each night you sit by the fire, and the memories that arrive aren't summoned, they simply come. A face, a laugh, the feel of winter on your old street. Then it passes. Not like loss, but like wind. This too is learning. The desert isn't harsh because it wants to be. It's honest. And in that honesty, you shed what isn't needed. You let go of habits, urgency, even identity, not to disappear, but to become something else. Something rooted. Sometimes you look in a mirror, a shard of glass maybe, or the surface of your kettle, and the face staring back has changed, not beyond recognition, but beyond expectation. You nod to it. You don't chase youth. You don't mourn what's faded. You carry yourself with the quiet pride of survival. A traveler once said the desert doesn't take things. It reveals what was never yours to keep. You understand now. The journey teaches this best. You leave behind not just objects or names, but parts of yourself that once seemed permanent, the need to be understood, the pressure to explain, the fear of stillness. Now, stillness is peace. Now, silence is welcome. The miles mark you gently, like calligraphy across time. And when you return, if you return, the people who greet you may not see the change at first. You smile in a new way. You pause before speaking. You let stories breathe. Some will ask where you've been. Others will ask what you've seen. But few will ask what you left behind. Only the desert knows that answer. And so do you. You step back into the city, and the noise hits like a wave. Horns, voices, footsteps, so many sounds stacked over each other. But beneath them, you're listening for wind. Not the gust that pushes skyscrapers, but the hush that curled through the dunes. And it doesn't come. You pause at crosswalks and feel the stillness missing. There's movement everywhere, but no rhythm. The kind you had walking beside camels, following the slow punctuation of hoofbeats on sand. In the city, everything rushes. You find yourself resisting, taking longer steps, standing quiet while others push forward. You flinch at silence, not because it's empty, but because you expect it to carry meaning. In the desert, silence was sacred. Here, it's awkward. People fill it quickly. But you remember how it used to stretch between stars, how it wrapped around your fire. You miss that. Your hands still hold traces of the Gobi. The skin hasn't softened, not entirely. It's still rough around the knuckles, still shaded by sun and grit. You touch metal railings, and they feel too smooth. You run your fingertips over paper, and it reminds you of the dry edges of dung fire. The camels don't follow you, not physically, but you think of them often. Sometimes a low sound from a passing truck mimics their breath. Sometimes you see a shape in the park, a curve of motion, and your heart jumps before you remember where you are. You miss Myanmar's grumble, Satsa's patient gaze, Book's stubborn silence. They were your mirrors in motion. They still appear in dreams. Not in drama, but in presence. Just standing, walking, humming. You reach out in sleep and feel the warm edge of a flank. You hear sand shifting beneath hooves. You wake up and feel as though something is missing. You don't tell many people. It's not the kind of absence that translates easily. How do you explain that a place so quiet has made your life louder inside? That the desert didn't take anything, it gave you a silence that speaks? Some days you carry too much noise. You sit on benches and look at the clouds, but they move differently here. They don't speak the same language. They don't echo the pulse of long journeys or the warnings of storms. You realize how much you relied on the sky out there, and still do, in ways you can't articulate. You forget directions now, not because you're careless, but because your compass feels reoriented. You used to walk guided by instinct and breath, not street signs. In the city, the paths are sharp and paved, but your feet still seek dust. They still scan for trails invisible to others. When someone asks where you've been, you don't say the desert. You say, with the wind. You say, following camels. You say, learning to listen. And they smile politely and move on. But inside, you're still there, still waking with sand in your throat, still tasting smoke in your tea, still hearing echoes in places that others call quiet. You watch water boil and think of nights by fire. You trace the lip of your cup and recall calloused fingertips. You feel your breath and wonder how far it travels in this air, how far it would travel if the dunes were listening. Even your solitude has changed. Out there, you were alone, but never lonely. Here, surrounded by people, something feels thinner, like presence without depth. You crave the kind of quiet where the air is shared by stars and camels and the slow churn of your thoughts. You don't grieve the Gobi. You wear it, not like armor, but like language, not like memory, but like rhythm. Each part of the city feels slightly displaced off tempo, too quick, too sharp. You move through it like someone translating the world back into softness. Once, in a bookstore, you found a map of Mongolia. You touched the lines, not searching for directions, just remembering. And you whispered a name, Satsa. Just her name, just enough. The desert doesn't end when your journey does. It lingers, in your breath, in your stillness, in the rhythm of your walk long after you've left its sands behind. From restless camels that whisper warnings to nights wrapped in sacred silence, every chapter of this journey carves something deep into the spirit. You've felt time stretch like dunes under your feet. You've learned that silence isn't empty. You've seen how the Gobi takes your hurry and hands you calm. Every fire lit, every mile walked, every hesitation respected, they become memory. Not loud or grand, but the kind you carry in your bones. And long after the footsteps fade, the lessons remain. Be slow, be present, listen more than you speak. If this story spoke to you, if you felt the wind, the stillness, the quiet truth of desert life, then come along for more. Subscribe to the channel for more journeys like this. Slow-burning narratives, meditative landscapes, and stories that honor depth over speed. Hit the like button, share with someone who needs a breath of stillness, and leave a comment below. I'd love to hear what part of the desert stayed with you. This isn't just travel, it's transformation. And the next story is already stirring beyond the dunes.